In 2017, a team of developmental scientists at MIT's Early Childhood Cognition Lab ran an experiment that most people in the parenting world have never heard about. They gave babies between 11 and 14 months a series of objects, and they watched what happened when those objects hit the floor. What they found was not what they expected, and when it was published, it quietly reframed something that millions of parents dismiss every single day as misbehavior. Something your baby has probably done at least once today. Something you may have said no to, removed the object over, or ended a meal to stop. The researchers called what they found evidence of active causal reasoning in preverbal infants. What that means for you, and for the way you see the next time your baby locks eyes with you and lets that spoon fall, is something that changes everything. Before I show you what the MIT team actually found, I need something from you. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now, and how old is your baby today? And tell me this, does your baby drop things on purpose and then look directly at you? Not at the object, at you. Drop that in the comments right now, because what you just described, if you said yes, is the exact behavior this entire video is built around. I read every comment. What you tell me shapes what I cover next. Here is what you have been watching from across the kitchen. Your baby picks up the toy. They hold it over the edge of the tray. They look at you, directly, deliberately, without breaking eye contact, and they open their hand. The toy falls. It hits the floor. And your baby watches your face, not the toy, your face. Then they reach for the next object, and they do it again. You've picked it up 17 times. You're exhausted. You've said no with varying levels of conviction. You've tried ignoring it. You've tried reacting with absolute theatrical indifference. And still, the spoon goes over the edge. The cup, the sippy lid, the piece of banana. And each time, your baby looks at you with an expression you cannot quite decode. Not mischief, not disobedience, something more focused than that. Something that looks uncomfortably like concentration. Because that is exactly what it is. Your baby at 9, 10, 11 months old is not dropping objects because they find destruction amusing. They are not doing it to frustrate you. They are not doing it because they haven't learned the rules yet. They are dropping objects because they are running an experiment. And you, your face, your reaction, your voice, the way your eyebrows move, are the data they are collecting. Think of it like a scientist who already knows the hypothesis, but needs to run the trial repeatedly to confirm the result. Your baby already has a theory about what happens when something falls. They already know, at a basic level, that objects drop and land. What they don't yet know, and what they are systematically testing, is whether that outcome is consistent, whether it can be predicted, and whether the most important person in their world responds the same way each time. Not once, every time. Because consistency is how a developing brain builds the concept of a rule. And your baby is building rules about how the physical world works at a speed and sophistication that the research has only recently begun to fully capture. But here is what makes this more than just an experiment in physics. And it is the part that none of the popular parenting content ever explains. The drop is not just about the object. The drop is about you. And the look, that sustained, locked-in look at your face after the object hits the floor, that is not coincidence. That is the second half of the experiment. Your baby is not asking, did the object fall? They already know it did. They heard it. They are asking, what does that mean to you? Does your response change? Can I predict it? Is the world, including you, reliable? And what the research has confirmed is that the reliability of your response in that moment, not your permissiveness, not your firmness, but your consistency, is one of the primary data points your baby is using to build their understanding of cause and effect in the social world. The object fall teaches them about physics. Your reaction teaches them about people. They are running both experiments simultaneously, with the same drop every single time. Let me tell you about Claire. She was 34, first-time mother of a 10-month-old named Theo, and she had reached the point where mealtimes felt like a negotiation she was losing. Theo was dropping everything. Every object within reach went over the edge of the high-chair tray with methodical regularity. Claire had read 3 parenting books. None of them had given her an explanation that felt right. She had tried enthusiastic distraction. She had tried removing the tray entirely. And every mealtime still ended the same way. Objects on the floor, Claire exhausted, Theo watching her with an expression she found impossible to interpret. She described it to a friend as deliberate. She was right. She just didn't yet know what the deliberation was in service of. And when she finally found out, not from a pediatrician, not from a parenting book, but from a summary of the MIT research that a colleague sent her, her first response was not relief. It was something closer to awe. Because the explanation changed not just what Theo was doing, it changed what she was seeing every time she looked at her baby. A research team at the University of British Columbia spent 3 years studying the dropping behavior of 187 infants between 8 and 14 months. They weren't studying misbehavior. They were studying what they called object manipulation as epistemic behavior, a phrase that means in plain language, babies using their hands to learn things their brains cannot yet understand through observation alone. What they found was that 79% of the infants who engaged in repeated dropping behavior did so with measurably different intensity, depending on whether the outcome was expected or unexpected. When an object fell normally and landed as predicted, the babies looked at it briefly and moved on. When an object was manipulated by the researchers to behave unexpectedly, to float slightly, to land with a different sound, to be caught before hitting the floor, the babies stared significantly longer, reached for the object again sooner, and looked at the adult present more frequently. The researchers described this as evidence of surprise-based learning. When the world behaves predictably, the brain files the information and moves on. When the world behaves unexpectedly, the brain flags the event and directs attention back to it, because something about that event contains information the model doesn't yet account for. Your baby is not dropping the spoon because they're bored with it. They are dropping it because the dropping itself generates data. And data is what a brain growing at the rate of 700 new neural connections per second needs more than anything else in the world. But what the British Columbia team found in the second phase of their study, the phase that most people never hear about, is the finding that changes what you do with this information. And it involves not the object at all. It involves your face, and specifically what your face does in the half second after the object lands. Now that you know the dropping isn't random, I want to ask you something specific. Think about the last time your baby dropped something from the high chair and looked at you. What did your face do in that moment? Not what you said, not what you did with your hands. What did your face do in the first half second before you made a conscious decision about how to respond? Drop it in the comments if you can, because that half second is the exact thing the research is examining. And what I'm about to show you is the most important part of this entire video. Don't leave now. This is where it changes. Here is what almost nobody knows, and it is the reason this video exists. The dropping experiment your baby is running has 2 distinct phases. The first phase is physical, testing whether the object falls, how it lands, what sound it makes, whether the outcome is consistent. Your baby completes this phase quickly, usually within the first few repetitions. The physical result is confirmed. The hypothesis is supported. The brain files it. But then the dropping continues. And parents almost universally interpret this as the baby failing to learn the rule, as if the brain received the information and didn't absorb it. That interpretation is wrong. The reason the dropping continues after the physical outcome is established is not failure to learn. It is that the second phase of the experiment has begun. And the second phase has nothing to do with physics. It has everything to do with you. What the follow-up research from the University of British Columbia found, published in the journal Infancy in a paper that received almost no mainstream attention, is that infants who continued dropping objects after the physical outcome was clearly established were not doing so randomly. They were systematically varying one element of the situation while holding everything else constant. They were varying the social context, dropping when you were watching, dropping when you were distracted, dropping when you were close versus far, dropping when another person was present versus when you were alone with them. They were running controlled experiments on the social consequences of a physical event, and they were doing this at 10 months old, without language, without explicit reasoning, using only the tools available to a brain that has been building causal models since birth. What the researchers concluded was something that Dr. Sarah Bloom, who reviewed the British Columbia data in a subsequent meta-analysis of infant causal cognition studies, described as one of the most underappreciated findings in the developmental literature of the past decade. The high chair drop is not primarily a physics experiment. It is primarily a social experiment. Your baby is not testing gravity. They already know gravity. Your baby is testing you. Your baby stopped testing gravity weeks ago. They've been testing you ever since. Claire found out about the British Columbia paper on a Thursday afternoon while Theo was napping. She read the summary twice, and then she sat for a few minutes without doing anything, because she was replaying every mealtime of the past 6 weeks through a completely different lens. Every dropped object, every look at her face, every moment where she had responded with exhausted frustration, or with theatrical calm she didn't actually feel, or with complete silence because she had run out of responses to try. She had been giving Theo data the entire time. Inconsistent data, not because she was doing anything wrong, but because nobody had told her that her face was the variable her baby was most interested in measuring. When Claire understood that, she didn't change her rules about the dropping. She didn't suddenly allow it or punish it differently. What changed was what she did with her own expression in the half-second before she responded. She became consistent. Not rigid, not cold, consistent. The same calm, readable face each time. And within 8 days, the dropping behavior at mealtimes decreased by more than half. Not because Theo had learned a rule about dropping, because Theo had collected enough data to close the experiment. The variable, Claire's face, had become predictable. The hypothesis had been confirmed. The brain, satisfied, moved on to the next thing it needed to understand. Now here is what this means for you. Not as a theory, but as something you can actually do differently starting today. The first thing to understand is that your goal is not to stop the dropping. Your goal is to make your response predictable enough that your baby's brain can complete the experiment and move on. That is a fundamentally different objective, and it leads to a fundamentally different behavior on your part. When your baby drops something and looks at your face, give them the same face every time, not a performance. Just a consistent, readable expression that tells their brain, I have collected this data point before. This outcome is already filed. The experiment on this variable is complete. The second thing, and this is the one that surprises most parents, is that complete non-reaction is not necessarily the most effective strategy. The research suggests that a mild, consistent, readable response actually closes the social experiment faster than total silence. Total silence is ambiguous data. It reads to a developing brain as a variable that has not yet produced a clear result. A quiet, consistent, brief response, the same words, the same tone, the same expression each time, gives the brain what it needs to categorize the outcome and file it. The most common mistake parents make when they learn this is trying to immediately eliminate the behavior through escalating responses. One firm no, then a removal of the object, then an ending of the meal, then a conversation about the rule. Each different response is a new data point. Each new data point extends the experiment. Each extended experiment produces more dropping. The behavior you are trying to stop is being sustained, in part, by the variety of your reactions to it. And the third thing is this: the fact that your baby is running this experiment means something about their cognitive development that is worth sitting with for a moment. The capacity to systematically vary one element of a situation while holding others constant, to isolate a variable, is a form of scientific reasoning. It is the same logical structure that underlies controlled experiments in adult science. Your baby is doing it at 10 months old, without instruction, without language, without any conscious understanding of what they're doing. Research suggests that infants who engage in sustained object-dropping behavior in the 9 to 14-month window show measurably stronger object permanence scores and more advanced causal reasoning at 18 months than infants who do not engage in this behavior at comparable rates. The dropping is not a problem to be solved. It is a developmental signal, the one worth watching. There is something wider here that the research is only beginning to trace. The social experiment your baby is running at the high chair is not isolated to mealtimes. It is part of a broader developmental project that spans the entire first year and into the second. The project of building a predictive model of the social world. Every time your baby tests a physical outcome and then looks at your face, they are adding two data points simultaneously, one about how the world works and one about how you work. Over hundreds of these interactions, across the first year of life, those data points compound. They build something. And what they build, researchers at Johns Hopkins have argued in a series of papers on early social cognition, is the foundation of interpersonal trust. Not trust as an abstract concept. Trust as a specific, measurable, neurologically grounded expectation that the most important person in my world responds to events in ways I can predict, interpret, and rely on. Dr. Sarah Bloom and her colleagues are currently examining whether the richness and consistency of caregiver responses during object manipulation episodes in the first year correlates with the security of attachment classifications at 18 months. The early data is pointing somewhere that, if confirmed, will make the high chair drop one of the most important developmental windows in the entire first year. Not because of the drop, because of what comes after it, because of the look, because of your face, because of what your baby is building every time they watch you respond. Is there a behavior your baby does that you used to find frustrating and that now, after watching this, looks completely different? Leave it in the comments, because that shift from frustration to understanding is exactly what this channel exists to create. If your partner has been the one picking up the spoon 17 times today and doesn't yet know what the experiment is actually measuring, send this to them right now. Not as a nice thing to share, because they are in the middle of a scientific collaboration with your baby, and they deserve to know what role they're playing. And in the next video, I'm going to show you what researchers at Harvard discovered about the moment your baby starts pointing at things, and why that gesture, which most parents treat as cute and nothing more, is one of the most significant cognitive milestones in human development. What the data reveals about what pointing actually means will change how you respond to it completely. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because that video is coming soon, and you cannot afford to see it after the fact. Somewhere right now, a baby is sitting in a high chair. There is a spoon on the tray. The parent across the table is tired. The spoon goes over the edge. The baby looks up. And in that look, in that brief, focused, wordless upward glance, something is being asked that no one in that kitchen has the language for yet. It's not a question about the spoon. It's not a question about the rules. It is a question about the world, about whether it's consistent, about whether the person sitting across the table is someone they can count on to respond the same way twice. That is not a small question. That is, in some ways, the most important question a 1-year-old brain can ask. And the fact that you now know it's being asked means you can answer it. Not with words, but with the one thing your baby has been waiting to read all along. Your face. Steady, consistent, present. This channel exists because the science of your baby's mind is too precise and too important to stay inside a research journal. And you deserve to understand every word of it.